Good evening, I'm Kathy Lewis. Election night, November 4th, 2008. While Barack Obama was making history in Chicago, Will Sessoms was making history in Virginia Beach. The regional bank president, who had served on city council and as vice mayor, ended the two-decade run of Mayor Myra Oberdorf in the city's first fall election. And Mayor Will Sessoms joins us tonight for his first in-depth broadcast conversation about the future of Virginia Beach and its role in the region since he took office. Thanks for being with us tonight.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here.
That, thinking back to November 4th, that was quite a night, and it stretched into a number of days, didn't it?
It really did. If you recall, the absentee ballots took a while to be counted, and statistically we thought we had it, but it's nice to know officially, and
Sure.
It wasn't until Friday, after that Tuesday election, that I found out for officially.
So what were those days like for you? I mean, you say you kind of knew, but what were those days like?
Statistically, it appeared we had it. Myra had called me on Wednesday after the election.
I remember that,
and,
yeah.
But I don't know that when she called that she had the information that the absentee ballots hadn't been counted.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, we got through it, and we had some ups and downs.
Sure.
But the bottom line is it turned out well.
Big voter turnout. We note that was the first of the fall elections, moving the council elections from May to November.
Unbelievable. 190,000 people voted in the mayor's race. The last time I ran for election was in 1998. And where we had 40,000 people to vote. Big difference.
Yeah, I think I saw a statistic that said the November numbers in Virginia Beach were actually greater than all the South Side cities in the previous May election had been. I mean, that's an astounding difference in turnout.
202,000 voted
yeah.
in November for the president, and that's a big number.
Yes, it is. No question about it. So I guess then November elections are here to stay.
I'd be willing to bet on that.
Well, let's get a little bit of your backstory. We noted in our introduction, and many people already know, that you served on city council for 14 years at large and 10 years as vice mayor.
Right.
Left for a bit of time in '02, but you are a Virginia Beach native.
Right, sure am. I'm 54 years old and been in the city my entire life, and truly love it.
Yeah.
And that's the reason I wanted to become mayor.
And went to First Colonial High School.
I graduated from First Colonial, then went to Virginia Commonwealth University, where I got a business degree, and got in banking right after I got out of college, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Sure. The old F&M.
Old F&M Bank, First and Merchants, that's right.
Boy, I'll tell you what, if there's an industry that's gone through a lot of change, yours is it.
It's amazing. I've only worked for 2 banks, but they've had a lot of different names.
Right,
no
exactly
doubt.
So. No question about it. So as a banker and as a business person, this issue that Virginia Beach faces now, as many cities do, all cities do across the country, is a challenging one, this issue of budgets, and how do we go about balancing this? Tough choices to be made.
We do. As it stands right now, we appear to have anywhere from $120 to $130 million deficit that we're facing in the upcoming budget. That's the result of probably about 80 to 100 million being cut back from the state.
Right.
And then the valuations of real estate going down is probably an additional 15 to 30 million. So the bottom line is we've got some holes to fill. But I assure you that the council has already started addressing it. We just had a retreat earlier this week. Normally we don't talk about the budget till the end of March. So we're addressing it. I'm confident that we will roll up our sleeves, have everything on the table, and we will get through this.
Is there anything that you can see right away that, you know, when you look at a budget, you can look at big pots of money and say, wow, that might, you know, if you cut that out, that makes a big difference, or small pots of money that add up?
Well, I think you're going to have a lot of small pots of money that add up. The city staff went through an exercise that evaluated what they had to have and had to do, all the way down to what they don't have to do, but it's a quality of life type issue. Regrettably, even when we get down to the quality of life type issues, something that you don't have to have, but it is good for the quality of life we have to offer in Virginia Beach, we're going to have to make some of those decisions. And as you well know, it's going to have an impact on someone. And that's regrettable, but I see that happening when we vote on the budget in May.
And with the kind of hole that you have to fill, and this does not come as news to you, that there are people who are looking at the proposal for light rail and the idea of extending light rail into Virginia Beach.
Absolutely.
And they're saying, why in the world would we think about doing that now when you have this big hole in the budget to fill?
Well, a couple of things. First of all, what we're really focused on now in Virginia Beach is acquiring the right-of-way. We want the Norfolk Southern right-of-way. As we sit here today, can I tell you it's a done deal? No. Can I tell you we've made a lot of progress? Yes. And I anticipate that we will, bring it to a closing here in the next 30 days.
And this, again, is the right-of-way that runs sort of parallel to I-260.
Well, it basically runs right through the middle of our city.
Yeah.
It, you know, obviously it would tie right into where Norfolk's light rail stops, and they continue on to Virginia Beach. The right-of-way is critical for Virginia Beach with or without light rail. Now, I'll come back and tell you, I feel strongly that I'm going to be a strong proponent of light rail to bring it to Virginia Beach. That being said, we've just funded the EIS, which is a study,
environmental impact statement,
that will come back with a lot of information for us to digest. My perception is that it's going to have the information that says we should move forward, and I look forward to leading the charge and bringing light rail to the city.
You said you wanted that right-of-way regardless of whether light rail was a factor or not. Why is that?
Well, it can be used for so many other purposes. First of all, it's a piece of real estate that runs directly in the middle of our city.
Sure does.
We should control that. If light rail doesn't occur, could it become a direct bus route? Yes, it could. Could it be bike paths, trails? Yes, it could. Could we end up selling parcels of it, if we don't use it for transportation, to adjoining property and perhaps even make money? A lot of opportunity there.
And as you point out, it is a very valuable piece of land. There's some money on the table from the state, I guess.
Yes.
You all have set aside some money from the city, so all of that is in the process of being figured out. Will the stimulus money that we keep hearing so much about be a piece of that?
No, at this point, no. Of course, we're still waiting to hear on the stimulus money as we speak. As it stands right now, the funding for the right-of-way will come $20 million from the state, $10 million from the city of Virginia Beach, $5 million from HRT, and basically a reduction in price by $5 million by Norfolk Southern. But in turn, we're giving them the easement income from Dominion Power on that property.
So it sounds like what you're saying is in any case, even though you have this hole in the budget which must be filled, this makes sense as a longer-term
no question about it. And I think this will be the last opportunity that we have to get it. And we cannot let $20 million in state money get away from us to help pay for this.
As you know, 10 years ago, your city was asked to vote on light rail in a referendum, and they said, no, not interested.
That's right.
There have been calls this time around for a referendum, especially considering the amount of money that we're talking about.
Yes.
Where are you on that?
Well, I have stated publicly that I support a referendum. I will also say to you that I think a referendum would win in Virginia Beach and I again anticipate the facts showing that light rail will work and it's the right thing for our city. Don't forget, I just went through an election, and I've traveled the city quite a bit during that campaign. I know that the tide has changed on light rail. In 1999, it didn't pass. I think $4 gas was approaching. I think that we have people that have moved to our community that are used to having that type of transportation. I think we could win a referendum for light rail in Virginia Beach.
So you would be in favor of a referendum, and then one of the editorials in the Virginian Pilot said, look, if Virginia Beach is to have light rail, then it is going to require the leadership in the city to vigorously support it and outline the plans.
No question about it, and that will be my responsibility to do the best that I can to. Again, I anticipate being a strong supporter of it, and if I am, I will stick my neck out to hopefully win that referendum. One
of the other, a couple of weeks back, we were talking about Virginia Beach development of the town center region, and one of the things that our guests were saying is that that's another addition that just was not there previously. That's an important element for light rail.
If you sit back and look at light rail in Norfolk and Virginia Beach, I can make the argument that we're probably better off as far as being able to plan for light rail to be more successful in Virginia Beach. Town center is going to benefit tremendously from light rail. We also have some strategic growth areas identified in Virginia Beach where we really want to do some redevelopment. Well, light rail goes by 2 or 3 of those locations. That will help make that happen as well.
It is an amazing story, and regardless of where you are on the question of light rail, and I know there are lots of opinions about it. You look at a city like Arlington and what's happened there since light rail went through there, at least in terms of the areas right surrounding those stops. It's really transformed that city.
It does, and there's great opportunity for that. But another thing also is for light rail to be successful, you have to move masses. Can I sit back and tell you moving people from the oceanfront Virginia Beach to downtown Norfolk's going to be moving masses? No, I can't. But do I say to you, we have to start somewhere? Yes, I do. Then, can we go to Kempsville, where we have 165,000 people, and go to the naval base where a large number are employed? Yes, we can. Can we go to the airport? Yes, we can. We got to start somewhere. I think people see that, and the vision for a good transportation system in our city would be starting with light rail to the beach.
And as you know, Norfolk City Councilman Randy Wright has said this is not about traffic congestion at this time. And a lot of people think that's kind of a hard argument to swallow, the idea that, well, if it's not about traffic congestion, then why are we doing it?
Well, I do think that it would have something to do with traffic congestion once we get the system in place. This is the starting point.
Right.
And again, it gets back. If we start moving people from Kempsville to the naval base, that will have an impact on traffic congestion. At
the end of the terminus, I guess the termination point is a couple of blocks from the oceanfront, at least as it's currently configured. Well, but is any of that set in stone yet?
No, and let me make that clear. It's absolutely not set in stone. I would say that it could very easily come to the old dome site, and I think that would be a good ending point, which would be just 2 blocks from the ocean.
As you know, one of the issues that people are talking about as well when it comes to budgets has to do with the school budget and the fact that they too have a hole to fill. I mean, that is the recurring theme across the country, no question about it. So there are some people who are saying, look, you know, you've got a hole in that school budget. Shouldn't we be taking care of that first? And I guess that's the kind of question you have to answer every day.
Well, and we got to compare apples to apples, and in fairness, you know, the money that would be coming from, if we do light rail, that possibly could come from the stimulus package, okay? Now, acquiring the right-of-way won't, but it's very likely funding for those type of projects, like light rail, will be included in the stimulus package. So that is a different pot of money that can only be used for those type of projects. The city of Virginia Beach has never neglected the school system, as far as I'm concerned, ever. I think we certainly realize the importance of good schools, and we have made a point of funding them appropriately.
I want to ask you one more question on this point of light rail, because it's something that runs beneath the surface of a lot of the light rail conversations, as I think you well know. And it certainly was a feature of the conversation 10 years ago. If it wasn't on the surface, it certainly was running below it. And that is the issue of race. And there was a concern 10 years ago, and I do a radio show every day. I would hear people say this. The sense of it was that some people in Virginia Beach did not want minorities, and I'm paraphrasing what I heard on the air, minorities from Norfolk at the oceanfront. Do you, whether or not that was true at that time, do you have the sense that any of that is different now?
Well, I don't think it was true at that time, and I can assure you it's not true at this time. Virginia Beach is a very diverse community, and I'm happy to say that I've had the pleasure of knowing so many people in our community, and everyone lives in neighborhoods, diverse neighborhoods, and everyone gets along very, very well.
You are more diverse. That is a much more diverse city than it was.
There's no question. Go in any neighborhood,
yeah,
and all you got to do is look. And guess what? People are living side by side, getting along. We've got a great community, a very diverse community, and I take great pride in it.
As you look at the issue of, there have been so many projects that have drawn people from all over the region to Virginia Beach. Thinking about the amphitheater project, which draws concert goers from all over the region. You look at and then there's this issue of the sportsplex, and what an interesting idea that has just been presented to take a project where the Major League Soccer didn't quite materialize the way one might have hoped it would have. So you've got that project out there. Tell us a little bit about what the plans are for that.
Well, let me backtrack. You know, when the amphitheater came on, Virginia Beach, in my mind, back then was looking for a win. You know, and I think, guess what? It worked. The amphitheater today generates, on average, about $1.3 million in direct tax revenue from the ticket sales and from the beverage concessions. The amphitheater, the amount of money the city put in it, paid for itself 3 years ago. I can't believe the amphitheater is approaching 14 or 15 years old right now. It blows my mind. But it was a great win for our city, and everything it generates now goes into the general fund. We need more projects like the amphitheater. The sportsplex that you just referred to, I refer to that's a lemon that, you know, it didn't work. But it was built because soccer moms and soccer dads and kids were at City Hall that night, lined out to the street saying, we want this. And that, you don't always build things to be moneymakers. And so the Sportsplex wasn't necessarily designed to be a moneymaker. It does appear now we've worked out a very good situation to have a field house and new management of the Sportsplex by the private sector. And in essence, the city not pay anything. Yeah.
Which will also remove the drain. I think it's $400,000 a year or something like that.
By not paying anything, it's about $500,000, just under $500,000 a year to maintain the Sportsplex. Well, that's gone.
Yeah.
And then, if you look at the projections, we could make $30 or $40 million over 20 years. But I think it's going to be great. And plus, they're going to put a new turf on the Sportsplex field, which will allow for more play. And believe it or not, we've also got professional lacrosse showing an interest in coming to Virginia Beach.
Yeah.
And I'm a big lacrosse fan, and I'd love to see it happen.
Well, I'm a big volleyball fan, and I was loving the fact that we'd have some decent indoor courts for volleyball, too.
That'd be great.
That would be nice as well. This is an interesting perspective, though, because it has to do with sort of a philosophy about government and business.
Right.
And one of the things I hear you saying is that if you can find a partner who can do this in a way that brings a different sort of approach to it,
yes.
that might make some sense.
Well, what it boils down to, we're talking about public-private partnerships, and they can be, very controversial, and they can be very complicated. I will come back and tell you, the amphitheater is a fine example of one working. The 31st Street Hilton, think how controversial that was. A tremendous moneymaker, and what else? People that live in the city are going and enjoying it. Town Center. Last year, Town Center, after paying all the debt service on every penny that was invested by the city, netted $5 billion to the general fund. If we are sincere about trying to take the tax, a little relief on the residential real estate tax, we must do projects like that. As a city, we only have a few places to go for revenue. And real estate tax is the number one. Yeah. And I truly believe that well thought out private-public partnerships are critical to moving our city forward.
And a city the size of Virginia Beach, the most populous city in the Commonwealth, has such a role to play in the region, has played a role all along. But I wonder, as the mayor of the city, what is your philosophy about Virginia Beach's role in the region and about its relationship to the rest of the region?
Well, I'm happy to say that I've been meeting with our neighboring mayors. I haven't met with all of them yet, but I've met with the vast majority, and starting with Paul Frame. And I think Paul and I have an excellent working relationship. And matter of fact, we're going to be doing some talks together in maybe this month and certainly in March. But I'm looking forward to doing
talks
that.
For?
We've been asked to come together to speak at a bankers group that Coffee and Knowles is hosting, and Regent University has asked Paul and myself and Alan Krasnoff to come speak together.
Mayor of Chesapeake.
So I'm looking forward to it. But let me say to you that economic development is absolutely critical for Virginia Beach. Well, guess it's absolutely critical for Norfolk, Chesapeake, and so forth. I'm of the opinion we must play off each other's strengths. I don't know that we need to be competing with each other. As you know, economic development projects are very competitive. Yeah. I'd venture to say when we're competing with each other, by the time we've made our best offers, the deal probably isn't good for any city. I hope and I believe that we can work together to bring in new businesses that we will all benefit from. And in addition, Virginia Beach wants to do everything they can to help that carrier stay in Norfolk. I've told Paul that.
Because everybody's, a lot of those families are living in Virginia Beach.
I've told Paul that, and I assure you the city stands solidly behind what I just said.
And it seems to me, as we look down the road to the future, that's where some of that conversation has to go, because, and it's a tough sell, it seems to me, to some constituents. You've got some who've lived in other places who really can't even quite understand this form of government that we have here that puts us in a position to compete against each other.
It does. It does.
But boy, you know, that's something you sort of need to shout from the mountaintops.
I venture to say to you, if we don't do things and work well together, I think the region will suffer tremendously. We will not be in the game.
As you were quoted recently as saying that you felt that there were opportunities even in this dreadful market in which we find ourselves.
Absolutely.
Do you see some right off the bat? Or?
Well, let me say to you that in the late 80s, early 90s, we had the opportunity to acquire the property, Lake Ridge. It was in default with, at that time, I think it was Nations Bank. Don't hold me to the bank name. The editorial staff said, why is Virginia Beach doing this? This is the most stupid thing they've ever done. We bought about 1,200 acres of land for $8,000 an acre. Well, today, that's where your amphitheater is, your TPC golf course is, the Old Dominion Norfolk State Higher Education Center is, Centera Hospital. We bought this looking ahead, planning ahead. The editorial staff says it's one of the best moves the city ever made now. You have to have some guts sometimes if you truly believe it's the right thing to do. And buying that property back then was the right thing to do. It's turned out to be a tremendous asset for our city.
The other thing that will take some guts, and you've already sort of staked a stake in the ground on this one, is affordable housing.
Right.
Very controversial in some areas.
It is. And I was in a meeting about that this morning, and I'm not so sure. We certainly have seen land prices and housing prices decline, but not nearly declining where they need to get to be. But yet, I would still say even any decline is helpful. I would hope that we can encourage developers to go out and come up with some projects for our city that would allow us to give them higher density with the understanding that 30% would be for, workforce housing is the term I use. I hope
this is housing for firefighters and teachers and that kind of income.
I think it should be required of this city to make sure that the people who work there, it's not just the police and fire, it's the nurse in the hospital that takes care of you.
True enough.
I'd love to have a nurse living next door to me if I have a problem. Think about it.
There is that. Yeah.
But my point to you is we must make sure they have the ability to live in our city if they want to. Mm-hmm. And I've got a good feeling that most of them do want to. But we got to address it. This is tough. This is a tough one. But I think we can figure it out.
Yeah, that's one where you just got to keep talking about it, because people need to understand what we mean by affordable housing and what is meant and what it means to the community to have people living where they're working if they wish to do that.
Well, the council, in fairness, has addressed this and come up with some good plans, but yet the economy hadn't allowed them to move forward. I'm hoping that we can get somebody to move forward here in the near future on a project like this.
Well, no shortage of challenges.
Oh, but we'll get through them. We'll get through them. We'll get through them.
That's right. Well, Mayor Will Sessoms, thank you very much for being with us tonight. I hope we have another opportunity to chat with you, because there was lots of stuff we didn't even get to. I didn't get to ask you on camera about the TARP, but we talked about that a little bit off camera as well. And so we'll check in with you from time to time and
anytime.
Welcome you back to our program anytime you can make it.
We look forward to it.
Thanks, and best of success. And we'll be back in just a moment with a final thought. Mayor Sessoms and I did indeed have an off-camera conversation about that stimulus plan and about the plan that was unveiled this week for what is left of that $700 billion we've all ponied up last fall. And I can't quite help asking every banker I know about that. I think it's a fascinating thing, and it certainly is part of our national drama at the moment. Part of the plan, as you know, at least at one time, was to put a cap on CEO salaries for those firms that are coming to the government for a significant amount of help. And a number of commentators scoffed at that idea, saying that companies would find a way to get around the restriction, and they dismissed the move as largely symbolic. But you know, it seems to me that symbols are important. And the people who are lending the money get to put some strings on it if they want to. If my daughter came to me to lend her money for a fast car with 2 seats and a top that rolled down, I would first ask her if she'd lost her mind, and then I probably would not co-sign the loan. The same theory holds, it seems to me, when it comes to CEO salaries. We will lend you the money to stay afloat, but you have to show that you've learned something about what got you here in the first place, that you perhaps took risks you shouldn't have taken, and that maybe it's time for just a little humility in the process. Symbolism, maybe so, but symbols are important. And that's why even though we know that the president took office at noon, we still wanted to see that whole hand on the Bible thing, no matter how badly it was botched. It's why they lower the commission pennant when the command of a ship changes hands. It's a symbol to the crew that there's a new sheriff in town. And a $500,000 salary cap is an important symbol, it seems to me, that it's time to stop doing business as usual. Thanks for joining us tonight for our conversation with Virginia Beach Mayor Will Sessoms. Coming up next week, a look at Hampton Roads libraries. Virginia Beach's will be renamed for longtime Mayor Myra Obendorf, and Norfolk's is in the midst of a big move to a new space. If you have an idea for us, there are lots of ways to be in touch. Call us at 889-9425. Write to us at 5200 Hampton Boulevard, Norfolk 23505. And you can send us an email as well to whatmatters@whro.org. You can also log on to our website at whatmatters.tv. My goodness, we have a lot of ways to be in touch. That's where you can watch tonight's show or any other episode of this broadcast. And you can also sign up there for a weekly e-bit, which will let you know what we're working on for upcoming shows. And as long as you're online, check us out on Facebook and become a fan of the show to share your ideas about what matters to you. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week for another look at What Matters.